Hello there. So let's go off on a journey. I'm going to start with the bells. So that's my cue to remind us that we are now in a time machine, and I'm going to take you back in time and back in space, all the way back to the 20th century and all the way east of Glastonbury area, all the way to London. So I'm living in London at this point, and it's my great awakening, and I'm going to talk to you about the thing that happened to set me up, and I'm going to talk to you about the event itself. But the reason why I want to talk about this, I want to explain. There was an event in the 20th century which changed everything for the entire human race, and it was the discovery of what is now called a planetoid. This planetoid is called Chiron, regarded by astrologers as a planet, by astronomers as a planetoid. That's about as accurate as I can get. Chiron is the Greek deity, half horse, half man, the shaman, the wounded healer, the initiator. So Chiron initiated the human race all the way back in the 1st of November 1977. 1977 was a very significant year for me. It was the year in Jamaica the Rastafarians said the two sevens clash. It was an event that had been prophesied for a long time in the Rastafarian cosmology. So let me take you through this. So I've got myself a few notes here just to remind myself to get the order of things right. So before my awakening, what I was doing, first of all, I've got a degree in microbiology. I got a job. The only job I could find at that time was a builder's labourer, so I was a builder's labourer for a while. Eventually I did find a job in microbiology, and I started to work in medical pathology in a hospital in London called St George's. So that's what I was doing before my awakening. So medical pathology for me represents the old age approach towards medicine, rational science. So that's what I was engaged in. But as well as that, I was involved in a couple of other things too. So I want to tell a little bit about those. Three things. First of all, 6 years before 1977, I'd been initiated into the green medicine, and that happened to me at uni, and that played a major part in the deconstruction of the old belief systems and the old mind control programming which had been running me through normal upbringing that you get in life. Parents, teachers, other people of significance, government, society. I've been conditioned to certain beliefs and value systems, and they broke down gradually through the work with the green medicine. The second thing that happened to me in that time is Carlos Castaneda. I came across the Carlos Castaneda call to shamanism, and I developed the passionate desire to be a shamanic practitioner, and I had no idea how to go about it. There was no internet, and there were no shamans practicing in this part of the world that I knew about. There was no way to find out any more information at the point than what I got with Castaneda. And the third thing, what happened to me is that my brother's wife came back from her day's work, and she brought a work colleague with her, and he was introduced to us as Black Paul. I don't suppose he would be called that today, but that was the name he chose for himself. And he spray painted metals. That's what he did as his job. And he came into the flat and he pulled out some records from his bag. When he put one on the turntable, and he said, "You listen to this," and we listened to it. Blackpool's Jamaican. When he played us one track, and it's called Red, Gold and Green, and it's by the Toaster. A toaster is a very particular form of Jamaican musician, and out of the toasting from Jamaica eventually grew the rapping and the hip-hop movement that swept the world. At that time it didn't exist outside Jamaica. So he laid us Red, Gold and Green by Iroy. That changed our consciousness irrevocably we were so surprised. It was our very first exposure to what is called message music. So we've got message music, we've got the green medicine, and I've been initiated into the idea of shamanism, not the practice, by Castaneda. So then 1977, the year actually happens. So it's a really big build-up. 1st of November 1977, that's when Chiron is actually discovered. The astronomers discover Chiron, and then the astrologers get to work to unravel the mysteries behind this. So these are things that happened to me in 1977. Very first thing I've got written down here is I discovered Compendium Bookshop in North London, in Camden Town. An amazing bookshop. You could go there and spend as many hours as you like studying the books. The people who owned the shop were totally cool about it, and when you had the money, when you found the book that you simply had to have, you'd buy it, and that's how their business operated. I was introduced to the whole of esoteric lore, knowledge and understanding as was written in books at that time. A huge spectrum of information from a whole variety of sources. So that really opened my mind up to all sorts of new possibilities through reading the printed word. That was a really big one for me. The second one for me was in the summer. I was in my flat in North London, and I'd obtained some Liberty caps, what people sometimes refer to as magic mushrooms, and I had my own private ceremony with myself. And what happened is I entered into a very deep communion. I didn't know this at the time, but it seems, I found out, it's an absolute certainty. The mushrooms are very synergistic when employed with the green medicine, so I had exactly the right situation going on for myself. I had a stack of cards, a stack of pieces of card and a pen. Just happened to be handy. And what happened to me is that the mushrooms gave me information. I now call this silent knowledge. One single silent knowledge drop, one sentence. I picked up the pen and I wrote it down. I put the card down, put the pen down. Almost immediately came the next silent knowledge, and it repeated itself, the same message over and over and over again, until I got the pen out and wrote it down. I entered a state of no time, and at the end of the entire experience I had 95 cards full of silent knowledge, which was the message from the spirits of the mushrooms, because I realised they were spirits. I didn't know they were extraterrestrials at that time, but I knew they were spirits. That was very, very obvious. And their message to humanity was very simple. They want us to live simply, they want us to eat natural foods, and they want us to rise up like the mushrooms, throw off our chains of mental enslavement and become free. That was their message all the way back then. And this is the year of the 1977. This is the year Chiron is in the process of being discovered. This is all that's leading up to it. In the Compendium Bookshop, that leads me to Rudolf Steiner. I then discover a very special Steiner shop in London, in East London. I get 2 books, At the Gates of Spiritual Science and Knowledge of the Higher Worlds. Those completely open my perception up to the nature of reality in a way that I had never been able to conceive of before. So grateful for those books. So that's taking me even further towards my next step. And my next step, this is the one. So there I am, working in medical science, in pathology, and what I'm doing is I'm receiving every day samples of urine, sputum, blood, swabs containing bits of human body flesh, tissue, whatever. I'm examining those. I'm culturing the microbes on those samples to see what it is that the disease the person's suffering from, identifying the disease, and then doing a process to discover which antibiotics is going to cure the disease. So I was the scientist dude who used to say on the form to the doctor, that particular patient, that he required this particular medicine. And I remember being deeply disturbed because I used to go into, because it's a big teaching hospital, I used to go into the library and read up the journals. And one of the main antibiotics I was prescribing at that time for the doctors was called tetracycline. And I read in the medical research from the clinical trials, it appeared that tetracycline caused irreversible liver damage. So I had a deep dissatisfaction in doing something in my job which I saw as harmful, coming up with a prescription like that. However, what happened in my summer changed all of that. So I had been listening at this point for 2 years to this message music from Jamaica, and I'm going to include 5 examples of this music in the description, and I may throw a couple of others in the comments afterwards to give you a flavour of what is it he's talking about. What was he and his brother and his brother's wife listening to that completely changed their consciousness? Because this is what prepared me to go on my journey of a lifetime, and it was a physical journey, because this message music was fascinating and it was changing my consciousness. It was, I didn't know, it was catalyzing my awakening process. That's what I was aware of, but not consciously. So I did the only obvious thing. I booked a flight to Jamaica, and I asked for my job, because I only had 3 weeks holiday off per year. I asked to have an extra week off without pay, so I could spend a full 4 weeks exploring this amazing nation. And actually my job refused, so that was a real shame. So anyway, I went to Jamaica and had a series of utterly extraordinary experiences, and I could tell you so much, but I'm going to do my best to keep this really tightly focused to the main initiations that I had. So I've already mentioned this before. The 2 sevens clash meant 1977, the 2 sevens clashing, and Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican prophet, had prophesied many things. One of the things he prophesied seemed quite mundane. He said that the city of Kingston and the town of Spanish Town would meet in 1977. So before 1977 there were 2 completely separate places with countryside in between, but the prophecy was they would meet. In 1977 I was on Jamaican Railway, and I travelled from Kingston to Spanish Town on that railway, and it was true, because there was a shanty town as I went out of Kingston, and it never stopped, and then the shanty town simply continued, and then I found myself in Spanish Town. So that was an example of a prophecy being revealed, as the Jamaicans say, prophecia revealia. It came true. Other prophecies were bandied about at that time. It was said that the rivers would run with blood. That simply did not happen. So this is a really important point I want to make with prophecy. Some prophecies come true, and because of the changes in the consciousness of the human beings on this planet and the awakening process we're all in, some of these prophecies do not come true. I'm saying that so you can reflect on whatever prophecies are being spoken about at the moment, and people say, oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Some of these things do come true, some of these things do not come true, as I realised at that time. Yes, the 2 places did join together. No, the rivers did not. The rivers and the roads did not run with blood. Right, to get to it then. There were 1, 2, 3 things that happened to me in my experience in Jamaica I need to speak about. The first one is I was taken by someone I met to a shanty town with the name Jonestown, and I had a room in a guest house, and my landlady was absolutely mortified when she heard that I'd been in Jonestown for the day, because she said, you've been to Jonestown, you might as well have died. That was her attitude. You might as well commit suicide going there. So what was she talking about? Well, she was talking about, because it was a well-dread year in 1977, what happened in 1977 is the CIA was supplying guns to both the political parties in Jamaica to encourage as many of the Jamaicans to kill each other as was humanly possible. So literally there were gun battles going on all over the place, so that's why she was very concerned about me going there. So that was my first brush with mortality, which did not happen at all. I was very well protected, as I have been throughout my life. And the guy Neville, who introduced me to his home and his wife and his child, had a wonderful time there. So that was cool. So now comes the second one. The second one, I'm no longer in Kingston, Jamaica. I'm now on the north coast, in Port Antonio, a small town, and there I met a guy, and I don't realise this at the time, but he and his mate are what they call rumheads. So rumheads are not Rastafarians. These are guys that their greatest delight is to get very drunk on rum mixed with Coca-Cola, and they put the Coca-Cola and the rum in the same bottle, they shake it very hard, and it sprays out all over the floor and makes a right mess, and they seem to really enjoy that. So I'm staying with a couple of rumheads, and they make food for me, and I give them money so they can go and buy the food, and they give me something to smoke, which also I've paid for, and every afternoon I sit and I enjoy the music. They have all these records and we listen to music, and as they say, to use their terminology, die man mash up the music, which means that I'm on my chair and I'm just constantly rocking and moving to the music because it's so wonderful, and it's full of messages, and the messages are about awakening. So I'm getting my awakening messages in Jamaica, in the ghetto, in a small town, and it couldn't be better. Until one afternoon, same thing as always, go in there, put some music on, have a smoke, and they're talking to each other. Now the thing is, these guys assume, they do this incredible thing, they make an assumption. They assume because I'm a Londoner and I'm white, I won't understand anything that they're saying, but I've immersed myself in their music every night for the last 2 years, so I've actually learnt the language. So this is what I understand from what they say. Right, we're going to go get the real proper ganja, which we have not been giving him so far. We've been giving him this weak stuff. We'll give him the really strong one. We'll let him smoke that. He's then going to fall down on his face, and we're going to beat the shit out of him. We're going to dispose of the body, and we're going to rob him of all his worldly goods. So I'm hearing all this, and I'm okay, so that's the plan. Well, that's handy. Thanks for letting me know, dudes. So of course I don't retreat any awareness at all. I just throw myself into the music and feel the huge waves of anxiety flooding over me. And at a certain point, when I feel this is the time to do it, they've produced the incredibly strong ganja, they've given it to me to smoke, I've smoked it, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And what I do is I just slowly get up to my feet, and I look at one of them and I say, soon come. Now soon come means I am returning soon, and in a circumstance like this with no toilets in any of the ghetto houses, means you're wandering off to go and have a wee. So I stagger out the house looking like slightly worse for wear, but I'm absolutely fine, but they don't realise it, and I open the door, close the door behind me, and I just I simply pick my rucksack up off the floor, throw it onto my back, walk slowly through the backyard, out the back gate, walking a little bit down the lane, and then run like fuck, to be quite blunt with you, until I'm well away from there. So that was my second brush with mortality. Now, initiations include being thrown out of your comfort zone. So I've been thrown out of my comfort zone a couple of times, and I have a plan. My plan is to go and get the coach. There's one coach left, and that will take me out of Port Antonio back to Kingston. That's my way to deal with this. So I know exactly where the coach goes from, and I know what time the coach is supposed to go. And I arrive at exactly the right place, and I see the coach disappearing off into the distance. That is it. I'm now completely screwed. These guys, all they've got to do is walk through Port Antonio. They're going to find me. I'm the only white face in the entire region. It's not going to be difficult to find me. I haven't a bloody clue what to do, so I'm just walking along in a state of acute anxiety, and I see this guy. He's got a lovely smile on his face, and he's cycling in my direction. He takes one look at me. You can see that something's happened. He starts talking to me and explains what's happened, and he says, come with me, man. And so I simply follow me, go to completely the opposite end of the town. How convenient for me. And he takes me to his yard. So that's like, it's like what we have in the north of England. You've got a backyard, call it the yard, and then you've got the house. The house would be like a garden shed in England. That would be what a house would be like in the ghetto. Now there's no room for me to stay there, but that doesn't matter because he's got a really cunning plan. And this is actually a lot better for me. He found a place where I can be, where I can sleep, and it's actually outside in the nature. I can keep all my things with him in his house, and each evening I go off with my sleeping bag and pretty much nothing else, and I sort myself out, and I found a place where there is a beautiful cool breeze. The really big issue about Jamaica for me is it's incredibly hot compared with London. It's really hard to sleep, so I'm suffering from a bit of sleep deprivation at this point, and a lot of emotional overwroughtness and anxiety chemicals flooding my body from the near-death experience earlier that day. So I find myself, he's taken me to this place, and it's called Folly Point. It's the only place in that whole part of Jamaica where there's actually grass. So I simply put my sleeping bag down. I've got a nice little place next to an old broken down wall, and I lie down there and I sleep, and there's this beautiful breeze blowing over me. That's the first time there's a cooling breeze in all the time I've been in Jamaica, and it's like sleep perfectly. So every night that's what I do. I sleep there for the rest of the time I'm in Port Antonio. And there's something that Chucky, his name, realizes. He realized I'm ill. I've actually picked up a parasite in Jamaica, and so he takes me into the hills and he finds these two particular medicines. This is my third near-death experience. I've got an infection now, and he finds a Jamaican healer, and he makes me two tonics. He makes me a tonic for my blood and a tonic for my nerves, and I take these every day. And there's so much in these bottles, I take them back to England. I carry taking them in England for several weeks after I get back to my home country. However, there's something else. There's a fourth one, my fourth near-death experience, which perhaps is the most dramatic of all. It's one night. I've been sleeping up there for quite a few nights, no problem at all, having a great time. Now, I'm really old-fashioned in those days. I'm in my 20s. I used to actually go to sleep in my sleeping bag, even in places like wild places, in my pyjamas. So anyway, I hear a noise, and I get up out of my sleeping bag, standing there in my pyjamas, and this big dude comes towards me. He's got a machete in his hand. All he wants to do is to rob me of my possession. It's quite simple. There's only one really big problem for him. All this dude has got is a pair of sandals, a pair of pyjamas, and a sleeping bag. Well, this is no value to him whatsoever. He wants something of value. And I explained all my things with my friend, and he's really pissed off. As you can imagine, he's got a machete and he's waving it about. But on my wrist I have a watch. He glances the shiny nature of the metal band on my watch from the starlight, and he reaches out and pulls it off my wrist and stomps away, really pissed off. So that was my fourth experience. So those things really got me set up, and I did go back to England finally, and I did have full-blown dengue fever, which is not well known in the UK at that point. It just really wasn't heard of, and I wasn't able to go back to work, and in fact that was the end of my job. So those were my initiating experiences. So now I'm coming to the time that Chiron was discovered. These are all the things that happened to me afterwards. I lost my job in medical science. I increased my focus on working with my green medicine ceremonies. Now, I didn't use the term ceremony. People came to my house. I used to have loads of things for them to buy. I used to have herbs. I took a rucksack of Jamaican records back with me from Jamaica. So I used to put records on the turntable. People say, I'll have a copy of that one, a copy of that one. So they listened to the message music. They bought the message music. They bought the herbs I had for sale. They bought the natural foods I had for sale. And that's what my focus became. And it was a crash course in having many, many conversations and listening to hundreds and hundreds of people over a 4-year period. And I had the opportunity to mix with such a wide variety of people, because the people enjoyed the green medicine at that time. I've got doctors, I've got lawyers, I've got city folks, I've got army people, I've got engineers, I've got unemployed people, I've got car spray painters, you name it, every single kind of profession you can possibly think of. And that's what I was doing. And then after this is all I've really moved over after the discovery of Chiron. So Chiron is a rainbow bridge. Chiron connects the inner planets with the outer planets. We think about Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. These are all the inner planets, including Jupiter. And then we've got the outer planets, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. When Chiron was spotted by astronomers, for the first time the human race was able to actually activate the energies fully of all the outer planets. And this means that our multidimensional heritage suddenly became a possibility on a worldwide basis. It would not be true to say that people did not have amazing breakthroughs before. Of course they did. In 1961, Michael Harner went out and had ayahuasca in Peru. Lots of people had amazing experiences, lots of different things going on. People had all these mystery schools information, but the difference is it became worldwide and it became a phenomenon that swept across the world. So that's what I'm talking about with this particular thing, 1977, worldwide awakening. So this was all my awakening. So my really big thing was I trained to be a health counsellor, and that was such an amazing journey, and I learnt so many things. The training that I had was based loosely upon microbiotics, but included so much more. It included divination, mantras, massage, body work, breath work, dietary transformation, working with home remedies to heal people of cancer and numerous other conditions. And as well as all that, I then worked in the restaurant, putting it all into practice with the food. So that was an amazing time for me, and that led to all the things that I've been doing ever since. Frankly, my health counselor's course led me to all the things that I do now. The only common theme running throughout the whole of my life, from the age 18 right up to now, is astrology. Astrology has been my passion since I was 9 years old, and I read this chapter in this book that my parents had called Everybody's Book of Fate and Fortune. But in age 18, that's when I went to the British Museum and found the shops near the British Museum, but my first ephemerides and my first astrology textbooks, learned how to cast horoscopes using compasses and pencils, and that's how my journey began with the astrology. So the thing about astrology is it ties everything in, because astrology is the royal road to knowing yourself, as are all forms of divination. And the last little thing to say about divination, a lot of people think that tarot cards and so on is about foretelling the future. That's the old Piscean age consciousness. The new age consciousness, which is influenced by the astrological constellation of Aquarius, is not about that. It's about actually the multidimensional reality, about being able to let go of the linear time restriction, which is simply programming, and to embrace universal time, to embrace the eternal now. So this is my story about my awakening into the eternal now, and I'm so grateful because it happened when I was 25 in 1977, and that is what catalyzed all that I do in my life now. And I'm so grateful for all those influences, all those people that helped me, all the people in Jamaica that helped me, took me through harsh experiences, then brought me back to health with healing and a safe place to be and all the rest of it. So thank you very much for listening. And I have made this film in a sense because I didn't have the opportunity to share at the most extraordinary retreat I've just hosted, which was only last weekend. I want to say this: in Glastonbury I do dance, church and dance medicine. This is ecstatic dance. Every session, I don't know how it's possible, but every session is even deeper and even more amazing than the last. With Nature's Medicine retreats, it's the same story. Every time we have a retreat, we break through ground, we dash through boundaries, we open up and do things completely different from ever before. So it's always more and more profound. And we worked very deeply with astrology and with Chiron and everyone's birth charts. That's one of the things that we did. And one of the participants, as far as he was concerned, that was just as powerful as the full plant medicine ceremony. So thank you very much for giving me your time and attention, and I've enjoyed sharing this with you. So thank you. All the love to you.